and the phone rang, and it was a guy from out of town offering me a job. And oh no, man, I'm partying, having the time of my life. No. And he's like, man, I need some help. He had a place, and he wanted a barn built and some fence built. And he even said, my lazy son-in-laws won't help me, and so I know you're a hard worker. I've heard about you, and I want to hire you, and you can stay. I got a place you can stay, and the whole 9 yards. Put me up in the bunkhouse. No. Then I told him, man, my truck's broke down, and and I just made every excuse in the world, and hung up on him actually. And you know what's crazy about that? I look back on that, and that was my answer. That was the answer to my prayer that I'd prayed, the day before. God, get me out of here. And when, you heard that old joke about the guy that got caught in the flood, and he climbed up on the porch, and the water was rising, and the guy comes by in the John boat and says, man, you better get in, the river's coming up. And he's, no, God's going to save me. Well, you've heard that one. The water comes up a little more. He climbs up on the stoop of the porch, and bass boat comes by. Man, you better get in, the river's right. No, God's going to save me. Gets up on the very top of the house, and they drop down a rope out of a helicopter. Man, you better get in. No, God's going to save me. He drowns, gets to heaven and says, dang, God, what happened, man? He said, gosh, I sent a John boat, a bass boat, and a helicopter. All you had to do was get in. Well, that was nearly me. You know what I mean? I was almost that guy when that opportunity came my way. I hung up on him. I was like, no, man, I'm partying. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to, be responsible. I was, and about an hour later, somebody knocked on the door, and it's just a fact. You can argue with me if you want to, and tell me God didn't have nothing to do with it at all, but God knew what would work to get a wild wheel in a pickup. And I opened the door, and this little old half-naked brunette standing there, said, hey, Jimmy sent me to get you. And I said, let me get my bag. And I rode off with her into the sunset, and what me and her did was beside the point. But, what God wound up doing through that, and me walking away from my past is what I encourage people to do, try to do every day of my life. I said, look, man, if you don't like where you're at, it's up to you to change it. You can sit and pray like the guy that drowned on top of the house all you want, but if you don't do something yourself, it ain't going to happen. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you are. You got to get in the truck and drive off and don't look back. And life is, if you don't like where you work, if you don't like where you live, if you don't like your habits, if you don't like your weight, your body condition, it doesn't matter what it is. God made us, gave us a free will, gave us all kinds of talents and abilities, and the world is full of opportunities. Mm-hmm. If you don't like where you live, you don't like your family, now not your wife and kids, but if you don't like your family, if they're negative and, they're trying to hold you back, drive off, get a ride.